What's up guys, Hades here. So as you probably know, especially if you've seen my previous video, we are in the round of 4. We have a boring match. The Vex Wolf game was boring. The Cubs SF game was not close. I already reviewed the AOW Buns match, but I think it's pretty interesting to see the HMB SSQ match. Now, take a look over here at the tier list. I personally have put SSQ in the A and I have HMB in the B, so it's not a big surprise to me that this is the outcome, and the score line is not very surprising. So we have a pretty good participation here, 30 and 29. SSQ on the bottom side. HMB makes a huge mistake, having a bunch of players doing nothing in the bottom, and they're going to start to feel that very soon with an even matchup in the mid and an out matchup in the top, just barely. But we're gonna see here that even though HMB had very nice relocations, I'm a big fan of getting into their zone. It's pretty split though, right? Because SSQ has the right edge and HMB has the back edge. But what's just here is just coordination. SSQ goes for an all-in, grabs it immediately. HMB was not ready for it. They did not reply to it. They did not respond to it. Quick relocation. You can see the fast garrisons there. They saved their teammate. High communication levels. Not a big fan of trying to steal that position. You don't actually want to be sitting around 4 or 5 people. That's never going to be in your advantage. Looking now at the middle, we can see here it's quite even. It's 4, 8, 12, 4, 8, 11, and then a 12th coming in. So it's actually 50-50 here, and what HMB has is the advantage to relocate from Tower 4, so they made that early overcommit, but it's not going to be a big deal as they rotate back. Now coming back down up to the top Tower 1, we can see that SSQ is just a little bit more coordinated. The HMB players are falling quickly. The rallies are coming in very fast. And now there's open gaps, and those people in the back have to move up, or the people who are full HP on SSQ are going to come claim these spots. They have this corner spot and this front spot, and they just have full control. They own the tower, which means they can just full focus on HMB, and HMB has to be able to counter with a tower take or counter with some teleports, and one teleport there is going to help a lot. But they have to be consistent, and the players from base that die have to be relocating back into Tower 1, because this is still a relatively even match, but I don't see any of these 5 dead players moving back. I don't see any lines, and they're not. And I think this is just going to be a quick take from SSQ. Yeah, they're gumming up in numbers. They're porting them much faster. The bubbles have been used and failed, and it's just going to be a quick collapse here. Coming back to the middle, they're falling a little bit faster on the HMB side as well. We understand from the scoreline that SSQ wins by a relatively substantial margin, but it's important to figure out what happens and how to fix these errors. I think in this situation, it is a bit of a micro gap in terms of players being coordinated, the failure to deny the tower at the top when it was even, the quick and timely rallies by SSQ. You can see all these burning castles, half HP, almost gone, and now it's a 2-1, and this is just over here in the top. So their last chance and their last stand is here in the middle. It's been denied for 8 minutes straight, which is good. You can see that the support skills are active. Under a minute. Can they take it? And you can see the denial is just not there. There's not enough white lines firing off from the side. And it's kind of looking like a first, or not a first try, but I guess within 10 minutes is pretty solid. And yeah, they get, again, the middle. So they got the top, they got the middle, and then while all that's happening, they make a sneaky play and take the home. Not a huge fan of the backdoor plays. I mean, it's 3 versus 6, and anyone can join. This is going to be denied very quickly. But it is funny, it is distracting, it does waste some of their time. and it does, you know, build you a 4-1 point lead. They're getting 45-10. The margin grows very, very quickly when something like this happens, and it puts the HMB on the back foot, and now they have to decide who goes where and how can they make this, you know, an even match. They have very few options at this point. And I want to just skip forward slightly in the middle just so you can kind of see a time lapse of what the middle fight looks like in terms of players. You can see SSQ's really up in their face here. They're behind them. They have a small force on the side. And HMB is collapsing just a little bit. They do have some foothold on the bottom side here, but they're kind of losing on this top side. And they're really desperately trying to hold this middle. I've talked about this a lot. Middle is not always the key to victory, right? Especially if you haven't held it, especially if you don't have a foothold. Usually there are better options. You have to figure out, you know, is it better to maybe switch and transfer to tower 1? Can you find a weakness at their home tower, right? Because there is always 2 other options when you're down to 3-2. But they decide to stay middle, and they go for an all-in, and it's looking close, and failed. And once it gets rejected, all these marches are pretty much just bouncing. They go in and come out immediately, just the way it works. And it's just going to be too hard. I mean, it's been 3-2 for a significant period of the match. They're just so far away, right? I've talked about this many times, but there's rows. So when you're looking at rows, there is a line, right? The tower has a line here. Then there's 2 squares. This is 1 row, right? And these players, your march comes from the center. You can see the center of the castle, and it goes to the center, right, of the tower. This is the distance it takes to get from your march to there, and distance is equal to time. Now, this player has their march that comes from the center of their castle. This player is in row 2. This is row 1, 2. This is row 3. This is row 4. And you can see each player has to travel this much extra distance to be equal to row 1, right? And then it gets even worse the further back you go. And essentially, row 3 is almost double the time it takes row 1. Like, row 1 players can hit the tower twice before row 3 player or row 4 player can hit it. That's why I always talk about how proximity in the front matters, right? You can see how much this matters, and having gaps or having enemies away from you and taking your positions for tower makes it very difficult to take a tower, right? So if these HMB players are equal to the SSQ players on the left side, they cannot be this far away to make an all-in play. They'd have to get lucky, or the other team would have to play poorly to actually capture this. This is actually never a call I would make. I mean, they are in desperation mode, so they do have to kind of go for it and hope for the best. But in a situation like this, I would never assume I would take the tower, right? This is not a position that you would get your tower in. But yeah, moving on, we can see here they go for it a few times, they fail, and the failure to take it at this time of the game is just too much. It's basically a 2-1 point lead, 70-35, and then SSQ really just abuses the fact that they've overcommitted into the middle, they've left their bottom weak, and the game just pretty much finishes from here. 4-1, they're gonna get huge points in the next few minutes, and the game ends. Now it's important to look at some of the data at the end that tells a little bit of the story. I like to look at battle contribution. This is not the only factor that matters, but you can see here that contribution actually wasn't a big problem here. There's some players with some seriously high numbers, which means they had legit marches, they had serious potential, they were competitive, but it tells that the coordination, the quickness of rallies on the SSQ side was just a little better. And you can also look a little bit on the deep side. 14 players got 1,000,000, which is kind of my gold standard, and 13 here. So yeah, it was very, very close. I would actually consider 14. Looking at prosperity destroyed, you can see here SSQ has little bit more on the high end, but it's pretty neutral, which again just points to teamwork and coordination reign supreme in this match. And yeah, if you like these kind of videos, let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one.